In the quiet solitude of a moonless night, the vast expanse of the galaxy stretched endlessly above the desolate planet of Zorath 7. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, broken only by the distant hum of alien machinery and the occasional rustle of strange vegetation swaying in the cold breeze. Beneath the celestial canopy, a lone human guard named Elias stood vigilant at his post, his breath visible in the frosty atmosphere as he scanned the perimeter of the sprawling research facility. It was a place shrouded in mystery, where scientists from across the stars had gathered to study one of the most extraordinary discoveries in interstellar history, the captured queen of an enigmatic alien species known as the Veilith. Elias had been stationed on Zorath 7 for nearly 2 years, a solitary figure among the bustling corridors of brilliant minds and cutting-edge technology. Unlike many of his colleagues, who viewed their work with detached professionalism or even disdain for the imprisoned monarch, Elias harbored a quiet respect for the Veilith queen. She was no ordinary being. Her elongated, crystalline form shimmered faintly under the dim lights, radiating an aura of both fragility and immense power. Her presence commanded awe, yet there was something profoundly tragic about her captivity, a creature of such majesty reduced to a specimen behind reinforced glass walls. The Veilith were not invaders or conquerors but explorers like humanity itself, though their methods of communication and understanding often clashed violently with those of other species. When they first arrived near Earth's borders decades ago, misunderstandings led to skirmishes that escalated into full-blown conflict. Humanity emerged victorious, capturing the heart of the Veilith collective, their queen. Her imprisonment became a symbol of triumph for some and a source of deep shame for others, including Elias. As he paced along the outer edges of the facility, his thoughts drifted to the stories whispered among the guards, tales of how the Veilith queen communicated through intricate patterns of light that danced across her translucent body, each flicker conveying emotions too complex for words. Some claimed she could sense fear, sorrow, and kindness, responding subtly to those who approached her chamber. Others dismissed these accounts as mere superstition, but Elias believed them. He had seen it himself during late-night shifts when fewer eyes roamed the halls, moments when the queen seemed to acknowledge him with a soft pulse of luminescence, almost like gratitude. Tonight, however, the usual calm was disrupted by an unsettling tension in the air. Earlier that evening, rumors had spread throughout the facility about an impending experiment, one involving a controversial serum designed to suppress the queen's regenerative abilities. Many feared it would weaken her beyond recovery, effectively sentencing her to a slow death. Though officially classified as necessary for maintaining control over the Veilith population, whispers suggested ulterior motives tied to political agendas back on Earth. Elias clenched his fists inside his gloves, anger simmering beneath his stoic exterior. To him, it felt wrong, cruel even, to subject such a magnificent being to further suffering. His musings were interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps echoing down the corridor behind him. Turning sharply, he saw Dr. Leora Vance rushing toward him, her face pale and drawn. A senior xenobiologist renowned for her groundbreaking work on alien physiology, Leora rarely ventured outside the lab unless absolutely necessary. Seeing her now, disheveled and clearly distressed, sent a chill down Elias's spine. "Guard," she called out, her voice trembling. "You need to come quickly. Something's happened." Without hesitation, Elias followed her into the labyrinthine depths of the facility, his boots clanging against the metal floors as alarms began to blare faintly in the distance. They reached the queen's containment chamber within minutes, and what Elias saw froze him in place. The once pristine environment was now clouded with a faint green mist seeping from a ruptured canister near the base of the queen's enclosure. Inside, the Veilith queen lay motionless, her normally radiant form dulled and fractured, as if her very essence were being drained away. Leora rushed to a nearby console, frantically typing commands while shouting orders to the few technicians who had gathered. "It's the serum. They must have released it prematurely. We need to contain the exposure before it spreads." Elias didn't wait for instructions. Pushing past the panicked crowd, he grabbed a protective suit hanging nearby and donned it hastily. Without regard for his own safety, he entered the chamber, the toxic fumes stinging his eyes despite the mask shielding his face. Reaching the queen, he knelt beside her, his gloved hands hovering uncertainly over her fragile frame. She was unresponsive, her light dimmed to a barely perceptible glow. "Help me lift her," he shouted to Leora, who hesitated only briefly before joining him inside. Together, they managed to carry the queen onto a gurney, moving her swiftly to a decontamination unit. As the cleansing process began, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, not just for the Queen, but for everyone involved. Hours passed in a blur of activity as medical teams worked tirelessly to stabilize the Queen. Leora remained by Elias's side, her guilt evident in every strained word she spoke. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she muttered repeatedly, her hands shaking as she reviewed data streams on a portable tablet. "The serum was never meant to be deployed without proper testing." Elias listened silently, his mind racing with questions. Who had authorized the release? And why now, after so many years of relative stability? Whatever the answers, one thing was certain. The Queen's life hung precariously in the balance, and her fate rested squarely in the hands of those who had wronged her. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting long shadows across the facility, Elias found himself standing alone outside the decontamination chamber. Through the thick glass, he watched the Queen's form begin to regain some semblance of vitality, her light flickering weakly but steadily growing stronger. For the first time since arriving on Zorath 7, Elias allowed himself a glimmer of hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, redemption was still possible, for all of them. Word of the incident spread rapidly through the facility, igniting a firestorm of emotions among its inhabitants. While some staff members expressed relief that the Queen might survive, others simmered with resentment, viewing Elias's intervention as reckless defiance of protocol. Tensions flared openly in the cafeteria, where clusters of scientists and security personnel debated heatedly over meals. One group argued that saving the Queen was a moral imperative, citing her potential value as a bridge to peaceful coexistence with the Vailith. Another faction countered vehemently, insisting that any act compromising human dominance over the alien race posed an unacceptable risk. Amidst this turmoil, Elias found himself increasingly isolated. Once respected for his dedication and integrity, he now faced icy stares and muttered accusations in the hallways. His fellow guards distanced themselves, wary of association with someone branded as a troublemaker. Yet, amidst the hostility, unexpected allies emerged. Dr. Leora Vance, burdened by guilt over her role in the mishap, became a staunch supporter, advocating fiercely for the Queen's continued care and protection. Her transformation from detached scientist to impassioned advocate mirrored Elias's own journey, forging a bond between them rooted in shared purpose. The Queen herself seemed aware of the shifting dynamics around her. In the days following her rescue, subtle changes occurred within her chamber. The air grew warmer, charged with an energy that resonated deeply with those attuned to it. Technicians reported unusual fluctuations in the monitoring equipment, readings that defied conventional explanation. Most strikingly, the Queen began communicating more actively than ever before, her luminous displays growing brighter and more intricate. Patterns resembling constellations danced across her crystalline surface, each sequence imbued with a depth of emotion that transcended language barriers. For Elias, these interactions took on a profound significance. During his nightly vigils outside her chamber, he often felt a gentle warmth emanating from within, accompanied by soft pulses of light that seemed directed specifically at him. It was as if the Queen recognized his efforts and sought to convey gratitude, or perhaps something deeper. On one particularly memorable occasion, he swore he heard a melodic hum resonate softly in his mind, a sound both foreign and familiar, evoking memories of starlit nights spent gazing at the heavens. Yet, alongside these moments of connection came mounting challenges. Security measures tightened dramatically, with additional checkpoints installed and surveillance drones patrolling the corridors. Orders arrived from higher authorities demanding stricter oversight of all activities related to the Queen. Rumors circulated about plans to relocate her to a more secure facility, far removed from prying eyes and sympathetic hearts. These developments weighed heavily on Elias, fueling fears that his actions might ultimately lead to greater harm rather than healing. Despite the obstacles, a small but determined coalition formed around Elias and Leora. Comprising researchers, engineers, and even a few sympathetic guards, they met clandestinely to strategize ways to safeguard the Queen's future. Ideas ranged from petitioning Earth-based oversight committees to orchestrating covert operations aimed at ensuring her well-being. Each proposal carried risks, yet the urgency of their mission compelled them forward. One evening, as the group convened in a secluded corner of the facility, Leora presented startling new findings. Analyzing recent data, she discovered anomalies suggesting the Queen's biology was undergoing rapid adaptation, changes potentially triggered by the serum exposure. Instead of debilitating her, the substance appeared to catalyze unforeseen transformations, enhancing her regenerative capabilities beyond anything previously documented. This revelation sparked intense debate. Was this evolution a natural response to adversity, or did it signify something more ominous? Elias listened intently, his gaze frequently drifting toward the queen's chamber. Through the reinforced glass, he observed her resting peacefully, her light pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat synchronized with the cosmos. Despite the uncertainty swirling around them, he felt a renewed sense of resolve. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he couldn't abandon the path he'd chosen, not when so much depended on finding common ground between worlds. As weeks turned into months, the situation within the facility grew increasingly volatile. The coalition led by Elias and Leora operated under constant threat of discovery, their clandestine meetings becoming shorter and more infrequent. Yet, despite the heightened scrutiny, their determination never wavered. They meticulously gathered evidence of the Queen's remarkable recovery, documenting every nuance of her evolving condition. Meanwhile, Elias maintained his vigil, spending countless hours observing her from afar, marveling at the resilience and grace with which she adapted to her circumstances. During one such observation session, Elias noticed something extraordinary. The Queen's luminous patterns began forming shapes that resembled symbols from ancient human languages. At first, he dismissed it as coincidence, attributing the phenomenon to his own fatigue. But as the patterns repeated consistently over several nights, doubt gave way to astonishment. Could it be possible that the Queen was attempting to communicate directly using imagery comprehensible to humans? Determined to explore this possibility, Elias enlisted Leora's expertise. Together, they devised a method to project simple geometric shapes onto the walls of her chamber, hoping to elicit a response. To their amazement, the Queen reacted almost immediately, her light morphing into corresponding forms with astonishing precision. Encouraged by this breakthrough, they expanded their experiments, gradually introducing more complex symbols and concepts. Over time, a rudimentary form of dialogue emerged, bridging the chasm between species in ways previously unimaginable. This newfound mode of communication ignited a wave of excitement within the coalition. Researchers pored over historical texts and linguistic databases, searching for parallels that might facilitate deeper understanding. Engineers developed advanced projection systems capable of rendering three-dimensional constructs, allowing for richer exchanges. With each passing day, the boundaries separating human and Valeth consciousness blurred further, fostering a tentative yet undeniable rapport. However, not everyone welcomed these developments. Senior officials overseeing the facility viewed the progress with suspicion, interpreting it as a threat to established order. Meetings convened in secret chambers, where stern-faced bureaucrats deliberated strategies to regain control. Decisions were made to escalate security protocols, deploying automated defense systems designed to neutralize perceived threats. Rumors of impending lockdowns circulated, casting a pall of dread over the entire operation. Elias sensed the tightening noose closing around them. Late one night, as he prepared to leave the Queen's chamber, he encountered a contingent of armed guards blocking his exit. Their leader, a grim-faced officer named Commander Rylan, stepped forward, his voice cold and authoritative. "Guard Elias, you are hereby relieved of duty pending investigation into unauthorized activities." Panic surged through Elias, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Commander, I assure you, my actions have always prioritized the safety and welfare of this facility, and its most important resident," he replied evenly, gesturing toward the Queen's chamber. Ryland's expression hardened. "Your intentions are irrelevant. Orders come from above, and they will be obeyed." With a curt nod, the guards moved to apprehend him. Before they could act, a sudden burst of light flooded the corridor, emanating from the Queen's chamber. The intensity was overwhelming, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When visibility returned moments later, the scene had transformed dramatically. The Queen stood at the threshold of her enclosure, her form aglow with an ethereal brilliance that defied description. Around her, the air crackled with energy, creating an invisible barrier that repelled any attempt to approach. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled personnel as realization dawned. The Queen had intervened, protecting Elias from arrest. Silence reigned supreme, broken only by the steady hum of her radiant presence. For the first time, the true extent of her power, and her capacity for empathy, became undeniable. In the wake of the Queen's dramatic intervention, chaos erupted throughout the facility. Guards scrambled to restore order, their weapons trained nervously on the glowing figure standing resolute in the corridor. Yet, despite their readiness, none dared to fire, paralyzed by a mix of awe and fear. The air thrummed with palpable tension, each second stretching into eternity as the implications of what had transpired sank in. Elias, still shielded by the Queen's protective aura, locked eyes with Commander Rylan. The commander's face contorted with conflicting emotions, anger, disbelief, and perhaps a flicker of reluctant admiration. "Stand down," Rylan barked finally, lowering his weapon. His subordinates followed suit, though their grips remained tight on their rifles, fingers hovering near triggers. Taking advantage of the momentary lull, Leora emerged from the shadows, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "Commander, we cannot ignore what has just occurred. The Queen has demonstrated not only intelligence but also restraint and compassion. She protected one of our own without causing harm. Doesn't that deserve consideration?" Rylan hesitated, his gaze darting between the Queen and the assembled staff. The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon him, evident in the lines etched deeply into his forehead. Finally he sighed, his shoulders sagging slightly. "Dr. Vance, your point is noted. However, this does not change the fact that protocol has been breached. We must address this situation with utmost caution." As discussions unfolded, the coalition seized the opportunity to present their case. Armed with irrefutable evidence of the Queen's accelerated evolution and her burgeoning ability to communicate, they argued passionately for a shift in policy. "We stand on the brink of unprecedented discovery," Leora declared, her words echoing through the tense silence. "By continuing to treat the Queen as merely a prisoner, we risk squandering a chance to forge genuine understanding between our species. Isn't that worth pursuing?" Her plea struck a chord, resonating with those who had witnessed the Queen's display firsthand. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, bolstering the coalition's stance. Even some of the initially skeptical scientists nodded thoughtfully, their skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. Meanwhile, the Queen herself remained a silent yet commanding presence. Her light pulsed rhythmically, casting intricate patterns that seemed to echo the sentiments expressed by her human advocates. Whether intentional or not, these visual cues added weight to the arguments, reinforcing the notion that she was far more than a captive specimen. Behind closed doors, high-level negotiations commenced, involving representatives from Earth's governing bodies and key figures within the facility. Pressure mounted as news of the incident leaked beyond Zorath 7, sparking debates across global media platforms. Public opinion swayed unpredictably, fueled by sensational headlines and fragmented information. Some hailed the Queen's actions as proof of sentient benevolence, while others condemned the perceived leniency as dangerous naivety. Amidst this whirlwind of controversy, Elias found himself thrust into an unfamiliar spotlight. Interviews requested, statements demanded. He navigated the storm with quiet dignity, channeling his focus toward advocating for the Queen's rights. Each public appearance strengthened the coalition's position, rallying support from unexpected quarters. Yet, beneath the surface of diplomatic maneuvering and public discourse, darker forces stirred. Whispers of sabotage circulated, hinting at factions unwilling to relinquish control. Anonymous threats materialized, targeting both the Queen and her human allies. Security breaches plagued the facility, forcing round-the-clock vigilance. Trust eroded, replaced by paranoia and suspicion. Through it all, Elias maintained his vigil, drawing strength from the Queen's unwavering presence. Night after night, he returned to her chamber, seeking solace in the gentle hum of her light. Together, they forged a bond transcending species, united by shared adversity and mutual respect. In those quiet moments, surrounded by the pulsating glow of her essence, Elias glimpsed glimpses of a future where barriers dissolved, and unity prevailed. But the road ahead promised further trials, each step fraught with uncertainty. As dawn broke over another restless night, Elias gazed out at the horizon, steeling himself for whatever challenges awaited. For now, the Queen remained safe, her fate intertwined with his own. And though the outcome remained shrouded in mystery, one truth stood clear. The choices made in the coming days would shape destinies far beyond the confines of Zorath 7. As the days stretched into weeks, the facility became a crucible of conflicting forces. The coalition, emboldened by the Queen's intervention and growing public support, pushed harder for reforms. They drafted petitions, organized peaceful demonstrations within the compound, and reached out to influential figures on Earth who might sway policy in their favor. Yet, for every step forward, resistance seemed to double. Anonymous threats escalated into acts of sabotage, equipment malfunctioned, data was erased, and shadowy figures were spotted lurking near restricted areas. Elias found himself at the center of this maelstrom, his role shifting from protector to diplomat. He spent hours in tense negotiations with Commander Rylan and other high-ranking officials, pleading the case for restraint and understanding. Each meeting felt like walking a tightrope. One misstep could unravel everything they had fought for. Despite the mounting pressure, Elias remained steadfast, drawing strength from the Queen's quiet resolve. Her presence continued to inspire those around her, even as fear gripped others. One evening, after another grueling session with the command staff, Elias returned to the Queen's chamber. She greeted him with a soft pulse of light, its rhythm almost comforting. He leaned against the glass, exhaustion etched into his features. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," he admitted aloud, though he wasn't sure if she understood. "Every time we make progress, it feels like someone tries to tear it down." The Queen responded with a series of luminous patterns that swirled across her crystalline form. To Elias, they seemed different tonight, more deliberate, more intricate. It was as if she were trying to convey something beyond gratitude or reassurance. He called for Leora, who arrived moments later, her tablet in hand. "What is it?" she asked, noticing the intensity of the Queen's display. "I think she's trying to tell us something," Elias replied. "Something important." Leora studied the patterns carefully, cross-referencing them with the database of symbols they had been compiling. After several minutes, her eyes widened. This isn't just communication. It's a warning." "A warning?" Elias frowned. "About what?" Before Leora could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed, casting an ominous glow over the corridors. Over the intercom, a voice crackled urgently, "Security breach in Sector 7. All personnel report to lockdown positions immediately." Elias exchanged a glance with Leora, both recognizing the implications. Sector 7 housed the primary control room, the nerve center of the entire facility. If compromised, it could spell disaster not only for the Queen but for everyone inside. "We have to get to her," Elias said firmly, already moving toward the exit. Leora hesitated, torn between duty and danger. "If this is what she warned us about." "It is," Elias interrupted. "And we can't let them win." They moved swiftly through the labyrinthine halls, dodging panicked staff and automated defense drones that had been activated as part of the emergency protocol. The air grew thick with tension as they approached Sector 7. Voices echoed ahead, shouts, orders barked over radios, the unmistakable sound of weapons being readied. Peering around a corner, Elias saw a group of masked intruders forcing their way into the control room. Their uniforms bore no insignia, but their precision and coordination suggested professional mercenaries. Whatever their mission, it couldn't be good. "We need reinforcements," Leora whispered, gripping her tablet tightly. "There's no time," Elias countered. "By the time backup arrives, it'll be too late." Without waiting for agreement, he darted forward, using the chaos to slip closer to the scene. Leora followed reluctantly, her mind racing with possibilities. As they neared the entrance, Elias signaled for her to stay back while he positioned himself strategically behind a stack of crates. From there, he could observe without being seen. The intruders worked quickly, bypassing security systems with practiced efficiency. One of them carried a device that emitted a low hum, its purpose unclear. Another held a sleek black case, which he placed carefully on the central console before opening it to reveal rows of blinking lights and wires. Elias's heart sank as realization dawned. They weren't here to steal information, they were here to destroy the facility. And judging by the placement of the device, their target was clear, the Queen's containment system. "They're going to collapse the chamber," Leora breathed when Elias relayed what he'd seen. "If that happens, she won't survive." Elias clenched his fists, anger surging through him. We can't let that happen. But how? Outnumbered and outgunned, their options were limited. Then, inspiration struck. Turning to Leora, he whispered urgently, "Can you access the environmental controls remotely?" She nodded, her fingers flying across the tablet screen. "I can flood the area with inert gas. It'll disable their equipment and buy us time." "Do it," Elias ordered. "But wait for my signal." As Leora prepared the override sequence, Elias formulated a plan. Timing would be critical. When the moment came, he burst from cover, shouting loudly enough to draw attention. The intruders turned sharply, startled by his sudden appearance. Before they could react, Leora triggered the release, and a dense cloud of gas filled the room. Pandemonium ensued. The intruders stumbled, coughing and disoriented, as their devices sputtered and died. Seizing the opportunity, Elias charged into the fray, tackling the nearest figure and wresting away his weapon. Chaos erupted as guards finally arrived, responding to the breach. Gunfire erupted sporadically, but the gas rendered most combat ineffective. Through the haze, Elias spotted the leader of the group attempting to flee with a black case still in hand. Summoning every ounce of strength, he gave chase, closing the distance despite the suffocating atmosphere. Just as the leader reached the exit, Elias tackled him to the ground, the impact sending the case skittering away. For a brief moment, they struggled fiercely, each grappling for dominance. But Elias's determination proved stronger. With a final surge, he pinned the man down, shouting for assistance. Guards rushed in, securing the area and apprehending the remaining intruders. Breathing heavily, Elias retrieved the black case, his hands trembling as he examined it. Whatever was inside, it represented salvation, or devastation, for the Queen. As he stood there, surrounded by the aftermath of violence and betrayal, he knew one thing for certain: the battle was far from over. Back in the Queen's chamber, the atmosphere was electric. News of the thwarted attack spread rapidly, igniting a mixture of relief and renewed fear among the staff. For the first time, however, there was also a sense of unity, a shared acknowledgement that protecting the Queen was not just a moral imperative but a matter of survival. As Elias approached her enclosure, the Queen greeted him with a cascade of radiant light, brighter and more vibrant than ever before. In that moment, he felt a profound connection. Not just to her, but to the countless lives depending on the choices made here. Whatever lay ahead, he vowed silently, he would face it alongside her. Yet, as he gazed into her shimmering form, a question lingered in his mind. Who had sent the intruders and why? The answers, he suspected, would reveal truths far more unsettling than anyone imagined. The days following the thwarted attack were a blur of investigations, interrogations, and heightened security measures. The facility buzzed with activity as teams worked tirelessly to piece together the identity of the intruders and their motives. Despite their capture, the masked operatives remained silent, refusing to divulge any information even under intense questioning. Their loyalty, or fear, ran deep, leaving authorities scrambling for answers. Elias, meanwhile, found himself at the heart of the inquiry. His actions during the breach had earned him both praise and scrutiny. While many hailed him as a hero, others questioned his judgment, accusing him of recklessness that could have jeopardized lives. Yet, through it all, he maintained an unwavering focus on what mattered most, ensuring the Queen's safety and uncovering the truth behind the attack. Leora joined forces with Elias in this pursuit, her scientific expertise proving invaluable. Together, they analyzed the black case recovered from the leader of the intruders. Inside, they discovered a sophisticated device designed not only to collapse the Queen's containment chamber, but also to emit a frequency capable of disrupting her regenerative abilities permanently. It was clear now that the intent had been not just destruction but annihilation, a deliberate effort to erase the Valeth Queen entirely. This wasn't random, Leora said grimly as she examined the device. Whoever sent them knew exactly what they were doing. This is targeted. But who? Elias asked, frustration evident in his voice. And why go to such lengths? What does anyone stand to gain by killing her? The answer came unexpectedly, and devastatingly, from within the facility itself. During routine surveillance reviews, one of the technicians noticed anomalies in communication logs leading up to the attack. Tracing the data trail revealed encrypted messages originating from someone inside the compound. Further analysis pointed to none other than Commander Rylan, whose stern demeanor and rigid adherence to protocol had masked a far darker agenda. Confronted with the evidence, Rylan initially denied involvement, but the weight of proof crushed his defenses. Under intense pressure, he confessed, not out of remorse, but out of cold calculation. He revealed that he had been acting under orders from a shadowy faction within Earth's governing bodies, individuals who viewed the Queen's growing influence as a threat to human supremacy. To them, her evolving intelligence and ability to communicate represented an existential risk, one that demanded elimination before it spiraled beyond control. They see her as more than just an alien, Rylan admitted bitterly. They see her as a symbol, a beacon for unity between species. And they're terrified of what that means. The revelation sent shockwaves through the facility. Trust crumbled further as staff grappled with the realization that betrayal had come from within their ranks. For Elias, it was a bitter confirmation of his worst fears. The battle to protect the Queen was not merely against external forces. It was a fight against ingrained prejudice and fear entrenched in humanity's own psyche. With Rylan detained and the conspiracy exposed, attention turned to the future. Public outrage over the attempted assassination fueled demands for accountability and reform. Advocacy groups rallied around the coalition, amplifying calls for the Queen's release and recognition of her rights as a sentient being. Even some high-ranking officials, swayed by mounting evidence of her peaceful intentions, began advocating for diplomacy over domination. Yet, amidst the shifting tide, uncertainty loomed large. The faction responsible for the attack still wielded considerable power, and their defeat was far from assured. Threats persisted, lurking in the shadows like predators waiting to strike again. The question remained, could peace truly be achieved, or would fear continue to dictate humanity's course? In the quiet hours after the storm, Elias returned to the Queen's chamber. She greeted him with her radiant glow, softer now, almost tender. Through their unspoken connection, he sensed gratitude, not just for saving her life, but for believing in her when so many others had not. He knelt before her enclosure, placing a hand against the glass. "I don't know what happens next," he whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. "But I promise you this, I won't stop fighting for you. For us." The Queen responded with a cascade of light, forming patterns that seemed to echo his words. For the first time, Elias felt a glimmer of hope, not because the path ahead was clear, but because he no longer walked it alone. As dawn broke over Zorath 7, casting golden rays across the desolate landscape, Elias stood beside the Queen, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they embodied resilience, a testament to the possibility of bridging divides, transcending fear, and forging a new chapter in the story of two worlds bound by destiny. And though the journey promised trials yet unseen, one truth shone brightly. In the vast expanse of the universe, compassion and courage could illuminate even the darkest corners, guiding humanity toward a future where understanding triumphed over fear.